Hello viewers, welcome to my channel. Today we will study about friction. Friction plays an important role in our lives. In this video we will study the definition of friction, causes of friction, types of friction, advantages and disadvantages of friction, methods of increasing and decreasing friction, and fluid friction. After we have understood these topics, we will go for some MCQs. So let us start. What is friction? The force which opposes the relative motion between two surfaces in contact is called friction. The force of friction always opposes the applied force that may be push or pull. Cause of friction. Friction is caused by the interlocking of irregularities in the surface of the two objects which are in contact with each other. More the roughness of a surface, larger is the number of irregularities on its surface, and hence greater will be the friction. Now we will be discussing factors affecting friction. The friction between two surfaces depends on two factors. The nature of the two surfaces, smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces. Friction depends on the smoothness or roughness of the two surfaces which are in contact with each other. When the two surfaces in contact are smooth, then the friction between them will be small because the interlocking of smooth surface is less, and when the two surfaces in contact are very rough, then the friction between them will be very large because interlocking of rough surface is too much. The force with which two surfaces are pressed together. Friction is caused by the interlocking of irregularities of the two surfaces when one object is placed over another object. If the two surfaces of objects are pressed together harder by a greater force, then the friction will increase because pressing together two surfaces of objects with a greater force will increase the interlocking in two surfaces. Now we will be discussing types of friction. Mainly there are two types of friction: static friction and kinetic friction. Kinetic friction is also of two types: sliding friction and rolling friction. Now we will be discussing about these in detail. Static friction. The friction that exists between the surfaces in contact when there is no relative motion is called static friction. The maximum frictional force is present when a body just begins to slip over the surface of another body is called maximum static friction or force of limiting friction. Kinetic friction. It is the friction experienced by a body when it is in motion. It is also called dynamic friction and it is less than static friction. It includes sliding friction and rolling friction. Sliding friction. The force that comes into play when one body is actually sliding over the surface of the other body is called sliding friction. For example, when a flat body is over a flat surface of a table, the opposing force is sliding friction. Rolling friction. The opposing force that comes into play when one body actually rolls over the surface of another body is called rolling friction. For example, when a wheel or a circular disc or a ring or a sphere or a cylindrical object rolls over a surface, the force that opposes it is the rolling friction. Graph between applied force and force of friction. When we slowly increase the force with which we are pulling the box, graph shows that the friction force increases with our force to a certain value Fl. The box suddenly begins to move, and as soon as it starts moving, a smaller force is required to maintain its motion, as in motion friction is reduced. The friction value from 0 to Fl is known as static friction. The value of Fl is the maximum limit up to which the static friction acts is known as limiting friction or maximum static friction. Now we will be discussing about advantages and disadvantages of friction. Friction enables us to walk without slipping. Friction enables a car to move without skidding. Friction enables us to apply brakes and slow down or stop a moving car. Friction enables us to write and draw on paper. Friction enables us to pick up and hold things in our hands. Nails can be fixed in a wall or wood due to friction. Friction enables us to light a matchstick. Friction enables us to cut wood with a saw. Disadvantages of friction. Friction wears away the soles of our shoes. The tires of vehicles wear out gradually due to friction. Friction wears out the rubbing machine parts. Friction wears out the brake pads of vehicles gradually. Friction wears out steps of staircase in buildings and foot over bridges. Friction produces heat which may damage the machine. Friction reduces the efficiency of machines. Friction slows down motion. Now we will be discussing methods of increasing and decreasing friction. Grooves are made in the soles of shoes to increase friction and prevent slipping. Treads are made in the tires of vehicles to increase friction and prevent skidding of vehicles on wet roads. Spikes are provided in the shoes of players and athletes to increase friction and prevent slipping. Gymnasts apply some coarse substance on their hands to increase friction for better grip. Machine belts are made of special materials to increase friction and drive machine wheels properly. Now we will discuss methods of reducing friction. Friction can be reduced by making the surface smooth by polishing. Friction can be reduced by applying lubricants like oil or grease to rubbing surfaces. Friction can be reduced by using wheels to move objects. Friction can be reduced by using ball bearings between the moving parts of machines. Now we will be discussing about fluid friction, the friction exerted by liquids and gases. Those substances which are able to flow easily are called fluids. There is a friction whenever an object moves through a fluid. It is called fluid friction. Air exerts frictional force on cars, buses, aeroplanes, rockets, birds, etc. moving through it. Similarly, water exerts frictional force on objects like boats, speedboats, ships, submarines, fish, etc. which move through it. The frictional force exerted by a fluid or water is called drag or drag force. Now we will discuss about factors affecting fluid friction. Number 1, speed of the object. Number 2, shape of the object. Number 3, size of the object. And number 4, nature of the fluid or viscosity of the fluid. Higher the speed of an object moving through the fluid, greater will be the frictional force or drag acting on it. Larger the size of an object moving through a fluid, greater will be drag acting on it. Higher the viscosity of the fluid, greater will be the drag acting on object moving through it. Now we will discuss disadvantages of fluid friction. Number 1. Fluid friction reduces the speed of objects moving through the fluids by opposing the motion. It makes speeding up harder. Number 2. When objects move through fluids, air or water, they lose some energy in overcoming the fluid friction. This decreases their efficiency. Now we will discuss about streamlined shape. A body shape which offers very little resistance to flow of air or water around it is called streamlined or streamlined shape. Methods of reducing fluid friction. The fluid friction or drag can be reduced by giving a specialized shape called streamlined shape to the objects which move through fluids like air and water. Cars, aeroplanes, rockets, speedboats, boats, ships, submarines are made with streamlined shape to reduce drag. Dolphins, birds and fishes are also streamlined shape to reduce drag. Now we will discuss some questions. Number 1. It is difficult to move a bike with its brakes on because A. Rolling friction will be converted into sliding friction. B. Sliding friction will be converted into rolling friction. C. Rolling friction will be converted into static friction. Or D. None of the above. The correct answer is A. Rolling friction will be converted into sliding friction. Question number 2. Which of the following will produce the maximum friction? A. Rubbing of sandpaper on glazed paper. B. Rubbing of sandpaper on glass tabletop paper. C. Rubbing of sandpaper on aluminium frame. Or D. Rubbing of sandpaper on sandpaper. The correct answer is D. Rubbing of sandpaper on sandpaper. Third question. The frictional force exerted by a fluid is called A. Brag, B. Drab, C. Drag, or D. Tread. The correct answer is C. Drag. Question number 4. A person has applied some mustard oil in his hands. Which of the following objects will become most difficult for him to hold in his hands? A. Earthen cup kulhad, B. Thermocol tumbler, C. Glass tumbler, or D. Wooden cup. The correct answer is C. Glass tumbler. Fifth question. Ball bearing is a device which usually converts A. Rolling friction into sliding friction, B. Static friction into sliding friction, C. Sliding friction into rolling friction, or D. Rolling friction into static friction. The correct answer is C. Sliding friction into rolling friction. I hope now you have understood the importance of friction in our daily lives. I hope you liked the video. Please subscribe my YouTube channel Shikshak and do not forget to like and share the video. Thanks for watching.